Hello students, my name is Dr. José Luis Porta. I'm your instructor for the Survey of Mexican Music class. Today during the class we're lucky enough to have a guest mariachi. We have here with us Luis Miguel and Angel Duran from Mariachi Sol Azteca. They play some of the genres that we have discussed in the class, as well as demonstrate some of the instruments. So they were kind enough to join us for kind of like complimentary interview for the class. So first, can you tell me about the history of the instrumentation of the mariachis? Because they're used in different instruments now compared to when mariachi originally started.
Yeah, so traditionally they have the guitar, which isn't from mariachi background, but it is used from Spain. And then they use the Vihuela and the Guitarrón, which are native to the mariachi. Okay, the Vihuela is a higher timbre instrument, does not have the low E string, but it does complement the guitar when they're both played at the same time. And the Guitarrón is considered the bass instrument of the mariachi, which holds the rhythm, the tempo. That instrument is unique in the sense that it is played by pulling two strings at once and octaves as well. So you have one octave really just giving you that round low sound, and the other octave giving you the intonation so you can hear better. Other than that, the trumpet and violin are very widely used in other styles as well, but in mariachi, it is more about the articulation behind it. The way you bow, the way you phrase. It's the same thing with trumpet. The way you're tonguing, the way the vibrato, especially the vibrato in the trumpet, is the heart and soul of mariachi. When you hear mariachi trumpet, you know it's vibrato, all vibrato. You ask any trumpet player and they'll tell you it's all in the vibrato.
So during the class, you mentioned that you can get two different sounds of the violin. You have the classical one, and you have the tone that you get when you play mariachi. Could you explain those to us?
Yes. So classical, and from personal experience, coming from, I grew up playing classical and mariachi, so it really is kind of like Nick, the trumpet player, spoke. It's kind of like a switch that you have to just flick on and off, and all right, what style am I playing? So in classical, it's very all technique, very relaxed. You don't want to be tense at all. In mariachi, you are going to tense up the bow hand a little bit because you want to push more and kind of eliminate that clean sound. Classical is very
feel to it.
Yeah, the best way to explain that is, for example, if I was doing classical with the voice, right, like very flat, and then with mariachi might be a little more like you hear that a little bit, okay, but on the violin, like not necessarily singing. So it's more about pulling, playing a little bit off time, but on purpose, right? So to be able to do that and to know that you're doing that is what it's about.
Could you tell, for example, a little bit about the function of the vihuela in the mariachi ensemble?
So the function of the vihuela is basically, it's kind of like a percussive instrument, like in the way like a drummer would be to a band or a jazz band. It has the chords too, so it's kind of like percussive, and also like it keeps the singer intact with like the pitch of the song and stuff like that. And there's different rhythms as well. For the vihuela, you have the son jalisciense, you have la joropo, which is kind of like derives from Venezuelan music a little bit. It's very similar. And you have huapango, and you have ranchera and polkas and ranchera lentas. And the interesting thing is also you do play all of those different. When you're playing like a son jalisciense, you dig in a lot more on the strings. It's very rough and it's very, very heavy. Your hand kind of has to be very heavy for that kind of style. But let's say now you flip the switch on and you're playing a bolero, like Si Nos Dejan or So What I Mean, something very standard like that. You don't want to dig in so much. It kind of has to be more of a clean strum, a cleaner sound and stuff like that. And even the same with the rancheras, depending on which type of ranchera it is, what is it saying. And originally, the guitarrón didn't exist. It was just the harp, because the harp has the melody right here, and on the left hand can play the bass lines. But the guitarrón was invented because, well, it's hard to ride a horse and take your harp on it. So the guitarrón basically was more mobile. They also had a guitar which was called a guitarra de golpe, which is very rarely used these days. I have only one friend who plays it the way that traditionally it's played. So the chords are very different, and there's different tunings to that guitarra de golpe. There's like Michoacán, Jalisco, Tecalitlan. It just depends on the region.
So they call it guitarra de golpe, why? Because of the technique that is used to play, or because it's just accompaniment and not melody? Or
basically, kind of a little bit of both. And it's like a mix between, like the vihuela is high and the guitar is low, and like this is like the middle.
Like to cover the whole register.
To the whole range, you know. It's kind of like a piano. You got high, middle, low. You know, think of it as like the vihuela is the high, the high register. The guitarra de golpe would be the middle,
medium, and
then the guitar would be more on the lower end.
So you mentioned Venezuela. We watch a video in class on when we have groups from Venezuela coming to Mexico to participate in this mariachi festival. So although mariachi music is from Mexico, it has been a big influence throughout the rest of Latin America. Could you tell us like some of the genres that mariachi music usually plays? We have covered some of the sones, but for example, those things, when people say like, I want mariachi music, are they referring to specific genres, or they're referring to the ensemble that plays them?
I think they're referring more to the ensemble, you know, and I guess your traditional songs or songs that everybody would know, you know, like Cielito Lindo, or stuff I guess tourists would hear. That's what they refer to. Oh, I want a mariachi, because they associate mariachi with that song, right? Or La Negra, stuff like that. But I mean, mariachi musicians, I feel like kind of come from all backgrounds as well, not just mariachi. So depending on where you're from, you kind of bring a part of that with you. If you come from classical, you come from jazz, you come from, you name it. I mean, big band or whatever it is, swing music, and you kind of bring a little bit of that music with you and incorporate it into mariachi, you know? So you have your own, I guess, like musical signature, if you call it that.
Can you tell us a little bit about your backgrounds? How you guys came into playing mariachi music? What brought you to it?
Well, I started in high school. I walked into the music room, and it was split in two, and over here was the band room, and I used to be there like because I was in the drum line and the marching band and stuff. But I thought it was very interesting that on the other side there was a mariachi playing. So I walked into one of the rehearsals, and I kind of knew how to play guitar, like very little, some chords and stuff like that. And I kind of just started from there. I enrolled in the class and I started learning, and then they would take us to conferences and stuff like that. So I was around 15 or something, yeah.
And this was where?
In Nogales.
Nogales,
Arizona, yes, Nogales High School.
How about you?
I started, I think I was about 3 years old. Yeah, and it was before I think I even knew what music was. My parents just caught me playing with two straws, like just rubbing them together like that, like the violin, you know, and that's when they knew. I started seriously playing violin, it's when I was 3rd or 4th grade. And then mariachi was kind of there, but I was just more like focused on technique and fundamentals like scales, notes, finger placement, where to put your fingers on the violin, you know, what a sharp is, what a flat is. And then mariachi professionally, I started when I was 14. I was a freshman in high school. Yeah, and I played my first concert in San Jose, California. Yeah, San Jose, California. And I come from a very mariachi musical background. You know, like my dad was always playing awesome mariachi music around the house. I mean, since they both come from big superstar mariachi groups. My dad has experience with Mariachi Sol de Mexico. You know, he played with the original group, which was very like, kind of like, well, at least mariachis nowadays look to them as a reference point, you know, kind of like Mariachi Vargas, but a different group from the United States. So that he was actually the first, I believe, U.S. citizen to perform with a mariachi that was strictly from Mexico. So that was pretty cool. And then my mom was the first female group, was part of the first female group, you know, and she's actually native to Tucson too. And she was the first female in Mariachi Los Changuitos Feos, which is I think they just celebrated their 53rd anniversary, 53rd year anniversary, or something like that.
That's great. So you mentioned your mom has been involved in mariachi. Mariachi throughout history has been seen as a purely male music ensemble. How do you see now the position of women involved with mariachi? How has it changed and how people look at it now?
I feel before it was like you mentioned, kind of like strictly male. And I believe even from a traditional aspect, Mariachi Vargas still only accepts males, which I don't understand, and you have this new generation of mariachis, like myself, who have experience playing with women, and it really is no different. And speaking from a musical standpoint, having a woman actually helps. I mean, you can't have all the guys singing A's and B's all night. I mean, a woman's voice is naturally higher. Most of the time it is higher. So, and having a woman actually helps out just in terms of on a performance perspective.
Kind of enriches the ensemble.
Yeah, exactly. People go and they see men, but then oh my God, like they have a woman, and then all the women in the audience feel very empowered and which is great. It's more respect to them, and it's just, I feel like it just brings more people to the music overall.
There definitely was like controversy at first. I think I'm pretty sure that the first person who brought a woman into mariachi was Naticano from Mariachi Los Camperos, and when he brought the girl in, a lot of people were like, no. There
was a lot of resistance.
Yeah, it was a lot of resistance. Like he had his restaurant in LA, La Fonda. I mean, it wasn't his, or I can't remember if it was his or not, but that's where they played there. They played concerts, shows there, and people would tell him like, I'm not going to come to your restaurant anymore because you just ruined everything. Like, and he was like, well, you're not going to come anymore, and then you're not going to come. And thanks to that kind of movement, you have now a lot of all-female groups who play very, very good. You have the group that his mom was a part of, Mariachi Reinas de Los Angeles. We hear their CDs and stuff. They play just as good as the guys, if not better sometimes. Yeah.
In what type of settings do you feel that mariachi music is involved? What type of events do you usually play for?
I would say we play all sorts of events. I mean, we do quinceañeras, weddings, funerals, a lot of church-related events like masses and stuff like that. We've, ironically, whether you believe it or not, we've actually played for like divorce parties. What else? Festivals. We've actually done tailgates here at the U of A. I've done those before. Anywhere where it seems that people just want to have a good time and celebrate, regardless of what it is. Just any type of celebration, party, they're like, let's call it mariachi, because they know how to have a good time, or the music is very upbeat, most of it, so they just want to dance and move and just have fun.
Well, one of the things that we mentioned in class that we're covering, the book shows the example of the last Volkswagen car that was manufactured, the Beetle car in Mexico, that the company, to celebrate that it was a big event and to create some closure, they actually invited a mariachi group to celebrate the last Volkswagen that came off the line. So we can see that it's used as a way of closure or to mark important ceremonies.
That's why we play at funerals too. Even though they can be very heavy thing to do. It's playing for someone's mom or not grandmother or something that just passed away. But it is used as I think it's actually one of the few types of music that you can use to celebrate the beginning of life and also the end of it. Because we play birthday parties too. Like we play all kinds of things. People call you and they're like, "Oh, come play this thing," and you're like, "What? Yeah, what is it again?"
Serenades are very popular.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
serenades. Like it seems like something you'd see in the movies. Like the guy holding the boombox and singing, but that's us. We're the singers.
And actually, depending on how high of a level you are of a mariachi, you can be like one day, like 1 week you're like somewhere in Mexico accompanying Pedro Fernandez or Luis Miguel or somebody, and then the next week you're like at some backyard, playing a couple hours for gig. Yeah, it just really varies.
Well, every day is a little bit different in the life of the mariachi.
And I feel that's kind of what keeps mariachi interesting as well. Because you might play the same songs over and over again and over and over. But your setting, your environment is always changing. Your audience is always changing, and sometimes even the musicians you interact with are always changing.
What can you tell us about the way mariachi dress? Like, where does the clothing come from, and what's the tradition behind it?
Okay, so this is like a traje, you know. There are different types of trajes. You know, they used to use them like traje de gala, which is kind of like think of it as like a Mexican tuxedo that they'd wear to a nice event or like a Mexican ball, you know. And then they used other ones as well, kind of to just work daily life on a ranch, or even for when they went to war and stuff. They had other suits they used. But this is, I guess, if you want to identify it as the official suit of Mexico, I would call it that. I mean, there are other translations, but this is what I guess best represents Mexico. So mariachis want to do that because mariachis traditionally come from Mexico. So you want to represent your country in their attire. And what other way to just, you know, show the world their music when you look like a mariachi, right?
Is there a specific meaning maybe to the bow, to the colors or anything, or that just depends on each group has their own?
No,
their
each
own
group
way to
has their own kind of people. You know, now like people dedicate their lives to making trajes or making moños, or, you know, selling botines, belts, buckles, and so it just depends on the group. Each group kind of goes to their they call it a sastre, so it would be like your how do you say it? I'm losing the word in English.
Tailor.
Their tailor, yeah, your tailor, and he kind of says, oh, okay, what do you want? And he's got different samples of botonadura. This right here, what we have on the side is botonadura, or greca. That's when it has a design, and usually there's actually a very distinct difference between a charro and a mariachi. So a charro is actually someone who's like in the ranch, you know, on the everyday life. They're on horses, chasing cattle and stuff like that. And when I was playing in Guadalajara, we played at a charreria event. So these guys, they literally come out the gate and they're chasing cattle and stuff, and they're dressed as charros, but they're not mariachis. And there is an important difference to be said there, you know.
So was the charro look adopted by the mariachis or the other way around?
I think it was, I'm not sure 100%, but I'm pretty sure it was adapted from that. And we kind of...
Yeah, it wasn't, yes, I believe it was adopted from them. It wasn't just mariachis had it first. And then, I mean, they don't call it a traje de mariachi. It's actually called a traje de charro. Okay. You know, and the proper term, I guess, to refer to a mariachi is to call him a charro. Like a charro, you know, he's a charro, right? He's a fellow, you know, musician. But I interpret it as a musician because we play music. I'm not talking to him in the terms of, like he was saying, like, hey, farmer, or hey, you know, yeah.
Yeah. Very important to not call it a costume.
Definitely.
It's not a costume. So
yeah, it's definitely to be worn with pride, you know, because you're representing your country, and at the same time, it's your work. You know, if you go to work, you wear a suit and tie, like it's a suit, right? People don't say, oh, you're gonna go your work costume, you know.
Yeah. That's great. So is there anything that maybe I forgot to ask or we haven't mentioned that you feel like will be important for the students to know for the class? What would you like them to remember about mariachi?
I think that it's important to know that mariachi is it's very versatile. Like, it's very adaptable to a lot of things. You have mariachis these days singing in English, like singing Frankie Valli,
Michael Jackson.
Yeah, like they did a whole thing, Mariachi Rocco, and it's not just like mariachi. It just doesn't come from like, oh, just Mexico and like these guys playing at some bar.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it is improvisation. Definitely being able to transpose. I mean, you don't have the same singer the whole time, you know. Different people sing different songs in different keys, right? Like you might have one guy who sings El Re in Do, right, which is it's the key of C, you know, and 2 hours later you got another guy in the group who wants to sing it, but he wants to sing it a little bit higher in Re, but you don't have 5 minutes to go over it. You should. That's something that's kind of expected as part of your musicianship skills. You should know how to transpose. So usually, I guess, from a musical standpoint, mariachi is usually playing keys of A, D, E, F, B flat. We do, did I mention E? There are some, you can do keys like E flat, you know, and A flat, stuff like that.
Because of the tuning of the instruments?
Yes,
or?
exactly. You know, for example, the Vihuela is a good example. It's a higher timbre, but the way you would play an A flat on the Vihuela, there isn't as much clarity as you would play it, like for example, if you played a D chord on there, it's not going to sound the same as playing an A flat or an F sharp chord.
The bass.
Yes, exactly. The bass is the same way.
It can be a nightmare to try and play something in an A flat.
It can be done,
Yeah.
but you try to stay away from it.
Might not be the best quality of sound
exactly.
from the instruments.
Yeah, yeah. I guess maybe just that. Not look at mariachi as like kind of like this. It's a very traditional thing that comes from way back. It's not just like this, like hippie or whatever.
It has a
you say,
tradition,
you know?
but it's pretty much alive. You know,
Yes.
it's something that
I would
keeps changing and
definitely
keeps
call it
getting updated.
like an art form.
Mhm.
You know, there is, like anything, there is a right way to do stuff, and there is also a wrong way to do stuff. You know, but I feel like it is an art form. It is to be viewed as an art form, because to be able to do it correctly and make it sound authentic without, you know, maybe playing out of tune and stuff like that is very hard. And as it is with any style, classical, jazz, rock, you name it, to get that style, remain in that genre, and you know, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for coming over and helping out with this class and helping the students understand
of course.
a bit better.
Anytime.
So once again, we have Luis Miguel and Angel Duran. They both live in Tucson, Arizona, and they play around town. So definitely look for them if you can. Thank you.